All right, we're live. At least I hope we are. Every time I hit that start webinar button, I'm always like, is this really working? So I think it is. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Keith Klein. I'm the founder of VentureFizz. If you've never heard of VentureFizz, we are a careers website focused on the tech industry. So we help you, of course, find a job, but also a big piece of what we do is help individuals explore companies. So everybody's super busy with work, family, whatever. And you pop your head up and you're like, hey, I'm looking for a new opportunity. What's companies are even out there hiring? So you come to VentureFizz. We have over 250 companies that subscribe to our platform to engage with people like you. And then we have a ton of content. And that's really the key value add that we have at VentureFizz is the content allows you to give or gives you an inside look at each company. What's their culture like? What's their interview process like? So we have different video pieces of content. We have podcasts that tells like the founder's story. We have employee profiles. So our goal is to make your job search easier. Instead of going to Google and typing random things in, you come to VentureFizz, you find lots of great opportunities, the companies, the content, all packaged up for you to make your job search super easy. As an extension of that, we like to do events. And this is part of a 3-part event series that we're running that is helping you discover which type of or stage of company is a good fit for you and your career. So different stages have different benefits. So we're going to outline those. And today's edition is focused on publicly traded companies. So today, public, the next event that we haven't announced yet, but we will announce the date soon, will be focused on growth stage. So privately held, but probably have raised a large growth round of funding to scale. And then the third edition will be early stage. So companies that are much earlier, like a Series A, Series B startup. So we're going to outline the benefits of each of those different stages of companies. But again, today, we're going to talk about publicly traded companies. So if you're wondering, is this video going to be captured so that we can watch it afterwards in case you want to watch it again, or if you missed anything? Yes, absolutely. We're recording this. So on Monday, we're going to publish it. It'll be on VentureFizz. It'll be on our YouTube channel. You're going to get a link to it because you registered for our event. So kudos to you. We're going to save some time at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions, there is a Q&A section of this Zoom webinar. Sometimes people put it in chat. I'll monitor either or. But if you have questions, definitely feel free to add those in and we'll tackle them either at the end or maybe sometimes I'll throw a question in the midst of our conversation here. All right. Without further ado, I do want to get started here because we've got only an hour to get through a lot of content. So Ursela, Kristin, and Scott, thanks so much for joining us. We have great talent leaders here from GitLab, Veeva Systems, and DraftKings. So I want each panelist to introduce themselves and give a description of what each company does. So Ursela, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Keith. Glad to be here. Hi, everybody. My name is Ursela Knezevic. I'm Director of Technical Recruiting at GitLab. Been at GitLab for just over a year. And GitLab, if you're not familiar with us, we are one DevOps company. What we do is we provide a comprehensive platform across the entire software delivery lifecycle, which enables software developers to deliver products faster, increase their efficiency, and reduce security and compliance risk. So essentially, through our collaborative GitLab platform, we're enabling software developers to test code, to run, to iterate upon code, and do it in one platform. So again, much more efficiently, and it enables folks to move more quickly in the software development and DevOps lifecycle. In terms of our company, GitLab is a company that is about 1,800 team members large. We are globally distributed, completely remote. We'll talk a bit about that later, Keith, what that means from a culture perspective. And we have team members in over just about 60 different countries. I'm trying to think what else might be critical. Maybe I'll stop there and pass it on to the next panelist.
All right, let's go to Kristin.
Hi, so nice to meet everyone. Keith, thanks for the opportunity to be here today. So I head up talent for Veeva Systems, which is a global life science software company. So to boil that down to what we do, it's we support life science with all the backbone that they need from a software perspective. So if you think about the drug development process, we have software that supports every element of that. We're a publicly traded company. We are based out of Pleasanton, but we have offices globally, and we do have a large presence now here in Boston. And we are 6,500 employees, and we are on a mission to grow to 10K by 2025. So we have lots of hiring to do.
That is some aggressive growth plans. Yes. Scott, tell us about you and DraftKings.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and excited to share the virtual stage with both Kristin and Ursela. So my name's Scott Foley. Yes, DraftKings. I've been here for a little over 4 years, almost 4.5 years. Excited to still be part of the organization as we also continue to grow. DraftKings as an organization, if you're unfamiliar with us, because we're commonly confused with just strictly a sports company, not the case. Deeply rooted in engineering and analytics. Entertainment company is probably a better way to view us as an organization. We're a global organization. Recently celebrated our 10-year anniversary. Based in Boston, founded in Boston. Literally out of a small apartment just outside of the metro area, and now we're in numerous countries across the globe with a little over 4,000 employees. So exciting time here. We're probably on a similar trajectory to Veeva, I guess, Kristin, in terms of growth. I don't know the sheer number, but we're certainly continuing to grow and hiring year over year, and looking forward to this conversation.
All right, so something that's on, I think, people's minds these days, at least I'm sensing it, is, what's the current vibe of the market? You're seeing lots of information in the news where companies are scaling back, not hiring as aggressively, maybe even laying people off. So, what's the general vibe out there in terms of the job market? That here's 3 companies that are all growing still at a very steady clip. So what are you seeing in the market?
Still competitive.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So if there's all this gloom and doom in the market, if somebody is unfortunately affected by layoffs, which my heart goes out to you if you're dealing with something like that, the flip side of that is the market's still very active. So there's still opportunities where you're hopefully going to land something that you're excited about relatively, in a relative amount of time. Correct?
Correct.
What do you think,
I'd say
Scott?
so. I'd say.
Okay,
No, go ahead.
Ursela.
I was just going to say, I think yes. So completely agree with Kristin. It's very competitive out there for job seekers. I think too, where job seekers should be really thoughtful is looking at companies of our sizes, companies that are growing, we're scaling, we're continuing to do big things with big goals ahead. I think job seekers sometimes, if you get too caught up in some of the macroeconomic considerations or looking at what some of the very, very large tech players, for example, might be doing, sometimes folks tend to think that is a bellwether for what's happening across all of the tech market. And that's not necessarily the case when you dive into companies that are in a rapid growth phase the way ours are. There are lots of opportunities to be had, competitive certainly, but definitely opportunities across the board, sales, engineering, recruiting, especially. So they're out there for sure.
Scott, what do you have?
I think it does continue to be a very competitive market. Obviously, we see it every day with not only the amount of sheer applicants that we get, but just the amount of candidates that go through any given process. I do think that, like Ursela stated, I think a lot of candidates at times kind of gravitate towards, maybe some of those bigger names, where I think these 3 organizations, as examples, are in a great position to not only put people into organizations to be challenged day in and day out with either the tech challenges or things beyond that, but also add great value to organizations that are just continuing to scale and continuing to grow. Obviously, every individual has their perfect path, I guess, if there's such a thing. But also everyone needs to do their due diligence and figure out what is the best fit for them. But there is a fair amount of competition out there, but at the same time, there's an opportunity for everybody. So.
And I think the due diligence is something we've noticed with the candidates as of late, that there is more due diligence being done by candidates than the past. They're looking at companies from more of a 360 lens and really making sure that they're doing a meaningful switch this time versus just, gravitating to something that is hot and trending today.
Yeah. Is there some guidance that you would give job seekers that you can't predict a company, right? But we are talking about publicly traded companies where their financial information is publicly available. If you're dealing with a company that's venture backed or privately held, you don't have access to that information typically. So, what are some of the things that job seekers should be looking at to avoid that situation of, a company that's going to have layoffs, which you can't predict. There's companies that still might have right sizing or something like that, but ways to avoid that, and hopefully doing your due diligence to make a sound decision for the financial well-being of the company.
I mean, there's lots of different, avenues that one can pursue in order to do the right amount of due diligence. I mean, there's plenty of, now with just social in general, right? There's your Glassdoors, and there's other channels that people can look at. I think sometimes just networking within a company, talking to people that that work in an organization or know people that work in said organization. I think, when you're going through an interview process, and I think, at least for us, I think we're very candid and straightforward in the amount of, work we do, and at times how challenging that work is, but that's also exciting. But it's also very easy in the interview process to be kind of certain things to be glossed over. So when you're talking to people that actually work or have worked in an organization, you're going to learn a whole lot more about it. Truthfully learn a whole lot more about it. So I think everyone has their own, steps or due diligence steps that they prefer to take. And I think at the end of the day, if one person or any one person does that and they make the decision that they make, like, they're going to be in the right place. They're going to end up where they should be. But there's probably no secret recipe or magic formula that any one person could do. I think it probably varies from individual to individual.
Some of it's just applying business logic too. So take all of the networking and all of the information you're learning from the people itself, but then we're publicly traded. So everything about us is online.
Mm-hmm.
I'd agree with that. I think we're seeing companies shift to hopefully radical transparency. And so there are plenty of opportunities for job seekers and candidates to leverage their social network, to look online, look at earnings reports, dig into articles, news reports, to learn more about prospective companies so they come in informed to the interview process.
Yeah. No, that's definitely the beauty.
Yeah. And CEO videos, I think watching the CEO videos is another indication. It's top down, so how that CEO is coming across is probably indicative of the culture of the organization.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. So the, upshot here is, like Scott mentioned, do your due diligence, talking to people in the company, whether it's connections or maybe second, third degree connections. If they're going to check references on you, you can kind of do your backdoor reference on the company too, which I love that. It's definitely something that, people probably should be doing more of, but don't even think about. And then that financial information is out there, it's accessible, and there's lots of information that you can gather about where is this company growing. So use that to your advantage. All right. So what do you view as the key? Like, so joining a public company, we just talked about some of the factors that are available out there, but like, what are the key benefits that someone should be thinking about versus maybe, this hot venture-backed company that just raised, $20 million. Like, why join a public company instead? Ursela, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think when a company makes the shift from being privately held to publicly traded, what you gain is, first of all, it's a different type of resourcing. And I think a company that is matured into a stage where some of the processes, not always, but typically some of those processes are more defined. You'll likely have an org structure that feels more established, and likely senior leaders in the company that are experienced and or bring experience from outside of the company or have really been tried and tested through the growth of the company in the startup stage to get to a spot where you've got a solid bench of leaders from the top down and from the bottom up, really, to kind of help the company flourish. I do think that that's not always the case, but I do think that that's one of the major benefits. As well, there are financial benefits. Certainly, we can talk a little bit about compensation down the road, but from a career growth perspective, you're looking at a company that is more established, a little more fleshed out, and if things aren't exactly where they're going to be, they're getting there. So I think that's a good place for job seekers to start when they think about a publicly traded company and why it could work for them.
What about you, Scott? What do you think some of the key benefits?
Yeah, I mean, all very well said. I think you hate to use the word stability, but sometimes the stability within a public organization is a little bit more well defined than one that is just growing and starting out. With that said, we were that once, as was probably all of us at some point in time. So when you look at senior leadership, you look at the board, you look at, Kristin mentioned, even looking like some of the CEO videos, like what's their message, what's their philosophy, what are they kind of deeply rooted in order to help a company or an organization grow, and seeing those same players kind of in those seats throughout the course of time, you would have to assume that the roadmap is laid out. You'd have to assume that it's a well thought out one, that is one that will lead to profitability, continued growth in terms of employee size, product advancement, R&D, like all of those things will probably play into it as a publicly traded company gets a little bit further down the path. So all of those things Ursela said and probably more, but I think the stability that comes with that, again, not loving the term, but it's certainly something that everyone can or should consider, because you've said it a couple of times, Keith, like we don't know, when you talk about companies and kind of the unfortunate layoff situations, and some of those organizations were big in name. You just got to continue to do your due diligence, like we talked about in the last question.
Kristin, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, so I think that the financial transparency, I think that is something you're not getting in a startup, and that it needs to be documented out there beyond just the company itself. But back to what Scott was saying on stability, I think it's also proven. It's a product that's proven. The likelihood of the work that you're doing is actually going to see the light of day, and is going to be used by an end user that's appreciative and looking for that, because you have established client bases. You're not fighting just to get yourself into the market door.
Yeah, one of the things that I always, when I was doing my work as a headhunter, I would always educate people that regardless of stage of company, you can't project the future or predict the future. So what's important for you is to make sure that the work you're doing is making you more marketable. So regardless of financial times, you're still highly employable because of the skills that you've developed. So when I think about publicly traded companies, there's a career growth opportunity that is significant. So talk about, that career growth side of why it's such a key benefit. Who wants to go first?
I can just offer, the lens from Veeva is it's unlimited as far as you finding out what you want to do. I mean, people want to do different things throughout their career. It's no longer just staying in the same job forever. And so the opportunity within a sized company like Veeva is that your path is just not upward, it's sideways, it can take so many different avenues, and having an open environment where those conversations can take place is more apt to be at a company size of Veeva, where you have those options versus smaller companies or super large companies. So we have that open door policy of, if you have an interest in a certain area, you reach out to that leader and say, hey, what does it take to be an XYZ professional, and really learning and being able to move and transfer within those different groups within Veeva is what we try and harness. And we've got so many examples. My boss, for instance, was a consultant, and she's now the chief people officer.
Yeah, I think I would say the DraftKings is in the same kind of vein in terms of, like, I guess, playing on the corporate jungle gym. There's not always this up and down. There's lefts, there's rights, and in some cases there's steps back, right? And I don't necessarily mean in compensation, but to learn a new skill, to do something different. I mean, that's nothing that any one person should essentially be, I'll say, embarrassed by doing, if that's the path you want to take in terms of your career. But there's so much to do, at least within our organization. We're 4,000 plus people continuing to grow. You could start in our customer experience team, and then in a very short period of time, you're working on a product operations team, or you're working on our VIP team. Maybe you move over to our fraud group and you're handling things like anti-money laundering and some things that people don't even think about, something a company like DraftKings would even have or possess. So there are so many opportunities, and we do encourage and support internal mobility and progressing people through the organization. And we do encourage them to think about things outside of the vertical that they're presently in. There's product knowledge, there's company knowledge, and you can bring that to another team. And the diversity of that will allow us to just think differently about how the product operates, how the company operates, how that team is functioning. So I think if someone comes in with the right mindset of not only understanding maybe where they want to be, but the steps they want to take along the way in terms of networking and pushing themselves and stretching themselves, like the opportunities are arguably endless. And I think that's the term Kristin used too. It's just like you can go really anywhere you want to go.
But Scott, I think that's also a cultural thing that candidates should be assessing as they're going through the process of due diligence on companies too. Do they have that mindset? Because it's not everywhere that,
Fair.
your company and my company have that mindset, but it's not everywhere.
True.
Completely agree. I think in the publicly traded sphere, sometimes you have a wider aperture of job opportunities and career advancements within a company, and within the R&D space here at GitLab, that certainly comes down to, Scott, you mentioned it, products, new developments, the opportunity to shift into a role that was maybe not an option in a smaller, privately held startup, but it is as we think about, due diligence and compliance and regulation and how we continue to build out different product lines. So yeah, certainly those types of opportunities are really, really plentiful depending on the company, and certainly agree, Kristin, that's something that candidates should be fleshing out in the interview process and leveraging their external network to figure out what folks' experiences have been like in the company, the folks that are already working there.
Kristin, you already mentioned this a little bit, but I think what is important to note is, you get an opportunity to work with a business that is at scale, right? So there's obviously a core business to each of your companies, but then there's the innovative side of things, which we were just kind of talking about, where you look at all three companies, you're doing things that are just going to change the dynamics of the company, hopefully very positively in the future. So talk about that scale component of what someone's experience will mean as far as getting that experience, and then that innovation side of each business. So Kristin, why don't we start with you?
Oh, well, scalability, I mean, a growing company, it's unlimited opportunities on where you could grow once you get in the door and you start getting to be a known entity. Again, we've got numerous examples and stories of people who have started in one vein and completely ended up successful in a whole nother vein that they never ever thought their career would take that motion. With innovation, Veeva is very committed to the customer. So we are always listening and trying to figure out what is next, what's going to make the industry better. We are the backbone to them from a technology standpoint. The better we are, the faster they can get solutions out to the marketplace and make people healthier and make life better for people who are having health challenges. So supporting that industry, we're constantly innovating new ways. Like our most recent product through COVID was putting out clinical trials online. We have gotten 2 phases of that already launched, and that is going to make it's life-changing. I mean, the barriers to getting clinical trials off the ground, we all watched it with COVID. Imagine that being online, just the paperwork alone when patients don't have to travel to sites for plane trips and hours on end, that we're taking that out. That's the innovation, that's the thought process. So we stay very close to our clients to figure out what's going on in their world and how can we help solve it to make it better for them.
And how about at GitLab?
Yeah, when I think about GitLab and I think about that scalability piece, huge for us as we continue to ramp. I'd say a very important corollary and almost proxy for scalability is really the ability to be resilient and resiliency, and the ability to absorb change, to absorb shifts in org structure, to absorb shifts in product structure, product direction, and to continue to be successful. So I think that's what that experience coming into a company like this with the experience of being in a scalable org is huge, but also too for folks that are considering opportunities in privately held or publicly traded companies, the ability to be in an environment that puts you in the thick of a scaling organization and allows you to develop that resiliency muscle is really, really important. Iteration at GitLab is one of our key values, our key credit values, and we deploy rapid iteration across our products and everything that we do here. So certainly the ability to flex and to realize that really the only constant is change, and it's going to happen a lot. And to be able to leverage the skills that one has to move through that change, but also to make sure that they're keeping a keen eye out for opportunities when they arise, opportunity to step into a position and have some pretty meaningful impact to the business to the business's mission is an important piece too of iteration and just being savvy.
Yeah. I mean, Scott, when I think about DraftKings, it's, daily fantasy sports was kind of the beachhead at first, but then there's the sports book now, and there's tons of other things that DraftKings is working on. So it just seems like it's endless opportunities to participate in things that have already scaled to things that continue to scale as legalized betting is approved from state to state to other up and coming things.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Thinking back 2012 when we started, it was really just the one product. It was the one idea. It was daily fantasy sports. We've diversified and innovated over the course of the last 10 plus years. We've gone from just daily fantasy sports to sportsbook. We've gone from that to iGaming casino. We've gone from that to NFTs, marketplace. Marketplaces, like you would see on, other marketplace products, but we're actually buying, trading, and selling NFT products. With that, there comes the currency that you use to purchase those. So we've innovated and scaled quite a bit over the last 10 years. And with that, it's provided opportunities to people to join the organization and bring subject matter expertise into it. But it's also provided opportunity for current employees to go and do something completely different and provide or add value in just a completely different way. And it didn't have to be in the engineering space, although that's been a big part of it, or even the analytics space, which are essentially our two core pillars. There's marketing. There's, again, VIP, which a lot of people don't even know we have that. Like if you go to a casino, you probably, if you're spending enough, you have a host, you have someone who caters to you. Like we have that as a whole program. Loyalty, we have a loyalty program. So there's a lot of things that we do that are ancillary to the main product pillars. And then we also do a lot with esports, which people don't even necessarily know. And that for us, when there was a time, and talk about resilience as a company, like COVID shut down sports. So all of the products that I just mentioned, short of marketplace wasn't even a product yet, therefore NFTs weren't. And sportsbook and DFS was pretty much dead at that point because there was no contest being played anywhere in the world. And we doubled down on our esports business, and we started doing a lot more with that, as well as our media team, which is another whole group that no one knows we do. All the commercials you see on DraftKings, like we shoot them. Those are our commercials.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that.
It's we've innovated and iterated so much over the last 10 years, and there's still so much more to go. We're not afraid to take risks and try something new, but do it calculated and strategic. And I think that provides opportunity to a lot of people.
Now, on the flip side of that, right, the perception for a publicly traded company might be, we're talking about innovation and growth and all this stuff, but geez, I don't know, might be very large, slow moving, bureaucratic. I get hired to do a specific job. Whereas if I went to a startup, I would probably have to do, A through Z. This job, I'm just doing X, Y, and Z. So what are the, we're going to debunk the misperceptions here. Because I think when people think of those misperceptions, they're probably thinking about companies that are just publicly traded, but have been around for a gazillion years and can't find their way out of a paper bag type of company. So the culture, right? The culture is going to be very different at those companies. So talk about those misperceptions and how that's very different from what we're talking about here. Who wants to go first?
So I can start off. So Veeva does things differently. We pride ourselves on that. And one of the things that shows that is we're a public benefit corporation. So we actually changed our charter, and we are in it for the customer, the employees, and the shareholders, not just the shareholders. And we put that in the ground, and that's full transparency. That's how we run our financials. That's how we look at the organization. We do a 360 view from having that. That is not a bureaucratic driven organization that would do something like that. We also have a very solid line in the ground with our work anywhere policy. So it's the employee's choice. We offer great office spaces in every major city, but they can come in if they want or not. we allow that to be their choice, and we're not faltering on that. It's been our policy for over 2 years and will continue to be that way. And then innovating and constantly changing and making sure that we're answering the needs of the marketplace. We're not scared to launch a product, even if it looks like it's not going to make it. We want to learn the lessons, and we have that ability because we are well run. We have the money behind us. We can learn those lessons to better ourselves for our clients.
At GitLab, when we think about being able to be efficient and nimble and move fast, for us, the bureaucracy stays at a very minimum because our key tenet in our GitLab values is collaboration. And if you have a company that really focuses on enabling and empowering their team members to collaborate across geographies, across teams, across functional areas, you will not be siloed. You will have an organization, much like we have at GitLab, where there's a ton of greenfield to grow, to build, to iterate, to learn, to your point, Kristin, to learn lessons, to rapidly deploy, learn, maybe fail, learn the lesson, iterate again, and transparently share those learnings out so that we help others across the DevOps space and across GitLab learn from those lessons to go ahead and do what they're doing in their particular space. So I think if a candidate is worried about coming into a company and feeling really siloed or pigeonholed, or looking at bureaucracy and thinking it's not going to be for them, that's where you want to ask questions in the interview process and understand, what does the day-to-day look like? Who are my cross-functional partners I'm working with? What opportunities will I have to network and learn from folks that are outside of the department that I'm interviewing here for? But it really comes down to culture, and it really comes down to understanding what the norms are and what values a company holds to enable someone to be really, able to flourish and to work cross-functionally.
Yeah, I think a lot of it also starts with just leadership at the highest of levels. Jason Robbins, Paul Lieberman, and Matt Kalish, who founded the organization, have not wavered at any point in time around what type of company we want to be, what type of culture we want to provide to the employees, and how we want to provide people the opportunity to think differently and iterate. So we've stayed true to that as we've continued to grow. When I started here, we were 400 employees. We're now over 4,000, and that's just in 4 years. And I can't say that the culture has changed. I can't say that the mindset around having it one where we're agile and we're constantly moving, that hasn't changed at all. So their philosophy, as well as their transparency on how we're actually running our business and operating our business, has been super critical to our success. With that said, we're all about the employees. We're also all about the customers as well, like customer experience and customer centricity and all the things that we do to ensure that the users, whether they're using our marketplace product or another, are top of mind. We are out to be one of the top entertainment companies in the world, not just a daily fantasy sports company, but an entertainment company in totality. And in order to do that, you have to kind of continue to iterate. You have to try new things. And we've all probably worked at different companies, but we're also, I think, right-sized to still be able to do lots of cool things without, as you described, to keep the example of like the mega company. And I've worked for those too, and it is very different. You are almost, I wouldn't use the term pigeonhole, but you are in like one place and you're adding a lot of value and you're doing great things, but you're not necessarily extending and reaching across the aisle and bringing other people in and doing lots of cool things together. And I think that we're able to do that based on our leadership and our culture and our just overall philosophy of how we function and run a business.
And Scott, that brings up a really good point that people should be considering, is looking at the leadership. How stable has it been over the course of the company? It's not a normal story to see that. We have the same thing at Veeva, where it's the leadership has been in place since the beginning of time. And that is a huge piece to keep in consideration, because that offers so much stability, but it also offers access. Any level of the organization can access leadership. And that's another big key component in our size companies versus the larger.
Yeah, and access, I think, is huge. And we're running a hybrid model. So people are coming and going in the office as they essentially please, or choosing where they work. But when we are in our Boston office or our Vegas office or even our Ireland office or any other ones, and specifically in the Boston one, you see leadership, you see people. You could be in the cafeteria with Paul Lieberman. You could be, hanging out at some point in time in some way, shape, or form with Matt Kalish. So they have your ear. I mean, you can talk to them, and it just makes for a very, very different corporate culture.
Let's break down. This could be a very simple question where you're like, we're hiring across the board, but some of the key functional areas that you're focused on hiring for. So, Ursela, why don't we start with you, just to kind of talk about the growth plans ahead for GitLab.
Certainly. Hiring, I hate to say it, Keith, but yes, hiring across the board from sales.
That's a good answer.
I mean, truly, from our global sales team, again, close to over 60 countries, we're hiring everything from sales development representatives to sales executives across the board there. We're building out a lot on our people team. So our G&A function, our recruiting function, our people operation functions, our finance function, lots of positions to be had across the board. The space that I'm most familiar with would be our product and engineering departments. Lots of work done across the board there. From engineering, we have on our engineering side, we have a very, very diverse landscape of teams for candidates to consider joining, from our quality engineering team, hiring across UX research and design, product management, customer support, infrastructure development, kind of you name it. We're looking for really strong engineers that have backgrounds, front end, back end, some full stack, and so definitely folks that have had some experience or aptitude or willingness to learn open source, particularly, and there's specific languages there too. So I'm happy to talk with anyone that might have questions about what opportunities in the R&D space at GitLab look like. But we're really in a rapidly scaling phase. As I mentioned, we're just over 1,800 people, rapidly approaching 2,000. We're on a mission to grow further from there, maybe double our numbers in the next few years for sure. So there's lots to happen across the board there. And we can talk maybe a little bit about interview process as we move on down the conversation.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch upon that. How about Veeva?
Well, Ursela,
you talked about some growth goals.
Ursela's and state it. Every function, every area. We have over 1,000 jobs that we're trying to fill right now. So
wow.
And we've already, had a huge year in hiring, our best ever. So, we are definitely more than hitting that pace of the 10,000 employees by 2025 from where we are today. So please check out our website. We are all ears. We want to talk to people. We want to hear who's out there, and it's not just about the core quality or the core hard skills, it's the soft skills too. Are you a Veeva fit? We're looking for people who really resonate and want to be at Veeva, who are looking for a career, not just a job, who understand that the job search journey is a journey, not a here and now, and that they, even if there's no fit today, there could be fit tomorrow. So we want to have those open conversations and continue to know who's out there. With our jobs that we're looking to fill, we do take a different approach as well. Our managers are responsible for hiring. And so we are here to help and coach and get them through that process. But what I love about it is our managers know what we can and cannot do when they go to hire. And they're well-versed in how their teams are and how they grow their teams. So in essence, they've just built just amazing rock star teams because of our philosophies around hiring.
DraftKings.
What are we not hiring is usually the question. Yeah, I mean, careers.draftkings.com has definitely every job globally that we have posted. And I think it's probably the usual areas of hiring within a tech organization. We're never not hiring engineers at various levels, leadership or individual contributors. And even those at individual contributor level, including some interns that we've hired in the past, have made major contributions to shaping the product and actually being very involved in how we're building it. With that, product design, those functional areas, G&A, compliance, risk, people team for sure, especially the ops side, fair amount of hiring there as well. And then there are areas, again, that I don't think people necessarily think about us as having career opportunities. And I think that's the most important word here. And Kristin used it, like the job versus career. Like, that's kind of how you should be thinking about your search, is finding the right career fit and not necessarily the here and now. But there's roles like responsible gaming. There's roles like within anti-money laundering and fraud and fraud investigation work. Again, I mentioned the VIP team previously. So those people are BD in nature in some cases in some markets, but then they're also cultivating business, maintaining business, hosting people, those sorts of things. And then our whole, like I said, our media team, our content teams, our marketing teams. There's really not one area in the organization that we're not hiring in, at least present day. So there's a lot of great opportunities here. And again, you can pivot, you can start in one and pivot into another at some point in time if it's a better career path for you as an individual.
Scott, let's stick with DraftKings here. So I want to talk about, like, what's it like to work there? What's the culture like? Are you hybrid, in person, remote? What's the day-to-day vibe working at DraftKings like?
Yeah, it's all of the above. We actually gave the employees the opportunity to choose their style of work. So there are some people that choose to work at home and work remote. Maybe they're popping into the office on occasion, but that's where they choose to kind of do their day-to-day business. There are some people that are coming in a couple days a week. There are people that are coming in more often than not. And that's happening in any one of our offices around the globe. It's not necessarily regionally structured or location based. Like, people have the opportunity to choose that. It's essentially part of their onboarding to choose where they want to go. If you're in the office, there's advantages to being there for sure. There's the collaboration and the ability to communicate and kind of think tank through some things in rooms or even over lunch face to face. Sometimes, and more often than not, that lunch is provided as we think about like perks and culture and those sorts of things. So it's not just food and beverage, which is always available to employees. There's haircuts, manicures, pedicures, massages, all sorts of cool stuff that people can partake in. So I think culturally we try to create an environment where people come in and, cliche as it may be, but work hard, but truly play hard. And it's a great collaborative culture that Jason, Paul, and Matt have created. And the leadership team, as well as the managers that have people that report to them directly, and even the individual contributors, the ones that make the culture what it is today. And that just continues. So it's a really good vibe. And I tell people all the time, like, culturally, like, if you are the type of individual that likes to work on challenges, think through problems, collaborate with others, take others' ideas that may be better than yours and run with them, and be able to work through change, like, that happens every day here.
What about GitLab?
Yeah, so GitLab, we are a completely remote, globally distributed company. We've been all remote since inception, 2014. We have no physical offices anywhere in the world. And as I think I've mentioned, we have team members in close to 60 countries globally. Why do we have this structure? Why do we operate the way that we do? Well, we've really found that we're able to engage a wider, more diverse, and a more uniquely skilled global talent pool by enabling folks to work from wherever they are currently located. We focus more on keeping folks engaged and looking for folks that are passionate about the work that they do. Also, folks that are really adept at collaborating in a virtual workspace. So we do everything on virtual calls. We do allow folks to get together as often as they'd like to. We have amazing incentives like offering a visiting grant, which gave employees a stipend to travel anywhere in the world to visit teammates or get together. And we've had some amazing pictures and updates from team members that have done meet up in Bali. We had folks go to Spain. We had folks meet up in Mexico. So these are all GitLab team members that work around the world, and they're able to leverage this benefit to meet up and spend a couple days together just enjoying each other's company. So when we think about keeping that global workforce engaged, what we really focus on is a measurable objective or measurable objectives in someone's work rather than prescribed hours. So we give folks the flexibility that they need to work when they need to work and live their lives when they need to go ahead and live their lives outside of work. For some team members, that means the split schedule where they're on very early in the morning and then maybe take the middle of the day off for family or caregiving needs, and then they're back on later in the evening. We don't worry about too much about, because we're across all time zones. It's not like people have to work 8 hours Pacific time, for example. Whether you're on later in the day or early in the day, you can catch team members in EMEA, you can catch team members in APAC. So what we really focus on, again, are those key measurable objectives. What are the results in our credit values? R stands for results. What are the results that you're producing and how are they moving the business forward? In terms of how else we enable folks to really connect, because I know that's very much on everyone's mind. We do have team members that choose to work in shared workspaces, and we offer a great stipend for individuals that want to work in a WeWork space, for example, in whatever city they're in. GitLab will go ahead and reimburse the cost of folks doing that. So we strike this balance to enable people to work where they live, balance with their time outside of work, but also make meaningful connections, both in person and virtually, to really ensure that we have that vibrant, flourishing culture, but that, again, enables folks to do it from wherever they're at in the world.
How about Veeva?
So Veeva is, from a cultural standpoint, Veeva is a work anywhere company. So as far as your choice of where you want to work, we offer great offices with all the bells and whistles if you want to go to them. So I literally work about 1.5 miles from one, and I probably go in a couple of days a month when I just feel like I want to go see other people and get out of my house. And there's no pressure on that, but we do want teams to get together. So we also foster the offsite. As many times of a year you want to get together, what city you want to pick. We normally try and steer them towards the Veeva office cities. So there is also some cross-pollination with that. And then in the geos, we really try and bring together the groups. We make a lot of outings, happy hours, lunches, that can bring the teams together cross-functionally. So it's not just about engineering or product, it's also about engineering, product, and sales, and anyone else in the geographical area getting together and having a good connection point within Veeva. The culture is really driven from the top down. We call it, still being Veeva, and that's from the startup mentality right on through to today. We don't want to lose that agility. We don't want to lose the focus to our core. So we are really, it's the cultural fit of the people we're looking at that allows our culture to continue to be as great as it is. It's really commitment to the customer. It's commitment to speed and getting products out that are good, that are answering the need. And it's a commitment to each other. Just a team-driven environment. It's not about just the team you're on, it's the entire global Veeva. We are one big team, and it shows. There's not one person I've ever reached out to within Veeva that said, do you have time? And then said no. It's so collaborative, so great, including our CEO, Peter.
What has been discussed has been, in that, that last question was different elements of what a culture of the company is all about. And I think a key factor of that, as it should be, is building a more diverse workforce. So what types of initiatives does each of the companies have to help promote that more diverse workforce?
Yeah, at GitLab, we really, really thoughtful around promoting a culture of diversity, inclusivity, belonging. That value for us, the acronym we use is DIB, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And I'm really proud to be able to share that we hired our first VP of diversity, inclusion, and belonging earlier this year. So Sharita McMullen, she's amazing. So we've been working really closely with Sharita from a talent perspective to ensure that we are working DIB into all facets of our interview process. From a people perspective, GitLab has a vibrant team member resource group community that include folks from all over the world, and we have a TMRG, our Latinx TMRG, we have our Black TMRG, we have our LGBTQ TMRG, women, a very diverse plethora of TMRGs that team members can join to be able to connect with others and to look for allyship opportunities that they feel really passionate about. So I think one of the biggest areas where we shine as a company is really the global diversity that we are able to bring to everything GitLab does, because we have so many different viewpoints from a geo perspective represented in every corner this company. So geodiversity is something that we think about as well when we think about diversity, inclusion, and belonging. There's lots more exciting stuff to come down the road, but we are working to improve and expand our in-person presence actually at several marquee events. Very excited to say that we featured a guest speaker at Black is Tech, which happened earlier this month. And we have several other conferences that we've been part of. Dev Color in Motion is one more that we're planning for our next fiscal year that will enable GitLab to connect with prospective candidates, prospective collaborators from different walks of life in the DIB space. So I'm really excited the momentum that we're building, and key in building this momentum is keeping true to our GitLab values and really ensuring that we're being collaborative and again focusing on results and being transparent in the way that we continue to be a diverse and global inclusive company.
Yeah, at DraftKings we have a great diversity and inclusion team that actually is very responsible for our culture as an organization, ensuring that we have business resource groups here for people of color, women, LGBTQ. Talent acquisition plays a very intricate part in working closely with them, but those are great groups that are here internally, and then we have partnerships externally as well too that we leverage in order to spread, I guess, our message of diverse and include a diversity background, or I should say organization or culture. So we work closely with them, and we actually partner with them on the talent side too, to ensure that we're helping them with things like resume review and tips and those to really help people kind of find opportunities within DraftKings or maybe even outside of it as well. Matt Kalish is our executive sponsor for anything that we do that is tied to diversity and inclusion. So again, going back to the leadership and the philosophy and how much we want to invest in certain things, diversity and inclusion is certainly one of those things. And we've been recognized by organizations externally as well too for some of the work that we've done in that space. So, and we take it into our interview process and other areas of the company as well.
How about Veeva?
So like our hiring philosophies, it's the same with diversity and inclusion. We let our communities help drive the messaging, drive the change, drive what we should be doing. They know better than we do. So our D&I team leans in hard with our communities in making sure that all the voices are being heard and that we are working every angle we can, third-party partnerships within different geos, as well as helping us with messaging and reaching out to candidates. So we really have a lot of activity in our different communities that help us really lean in and figure out what areas and what other pools of talent we haven't tapped, because they know better than we do, and they can help guide and lead us there. So it has to start with talent attraction, right? If you're diverse, if you're not hiring them in, then where do you get more diversity from? So it's really for us leaning in on those untapped pools of talent we haven't thought of that our communities are opening us up to.
Well, there's a question that parlays into the next topic that I want to talk about. And so the question is, how can entry-level job seekers land a job with just a couple months of intern experience or less in this current job market? So the next topic that I want to talk about was like tips to stand out. How do you get your foot in the door? So for this particular question, I'm an entry level and I just have a couple months of internship experience. Like, how do I land a job or stand out or at least get my foot in the door?
Do your research. Know who you're talking to, understand what the company does, show that you actually care.
Yeah, and I would say in order to maybe avoid individual frustration, I would say focus on the roles that are most appropriate for you. I think sometimes, at least in my conversations with fresh grads or people with minimal experience, they're like, I've applied to 50 jobs, but I haven't got one phone call. And then you ask them which 50 they've applied to, and it's like, well, there's an obvious reason why you haven't got one phone call. Like, you're not a director, you're not a senior this, so you got to make sure that you're looking for the right types of roles, and therefore really read the job description, because every organization will put at least some sort of benchmark or baseline qualifications. And if it says you need 6 years experience, you're probably not qualified for the role. So as discouraging as it may be, you have to remember, that it's a career path and not a moment in time job opportunity. So you really want to find the right career path for you, which means you got to start at the right opportunity to get you on the right direction. So I think, yes, do your research. I think apply to the right types of roles, but leverage social media. Look at who you may know at an organization, especially ones that are sizable that you wouldn't even know somebody there. Unless you take a look, maybe they're an alumnus of the school you just finished at, and maybe they're willing to help you. So you have to be a little bit innovative in that sense as well too.
+1, do your research, leverage your community. At GitLab, we have a very transparent handbook that's over, I think it's close to 3,000 pages of text that talks everything you'd want to know about the interview process, our product teams, company culture, initiatives. So it's important for folks to get their foot in the door to be able to come into an interview process. And I think toward the end of that interview, come to the table with some really meaningful questions. Show us that you've been able to engage with the company through the research that you've done, and totally +1, Scott, ensure that you're reading the job descriptions and being thoughtful and being really realistic with where your skills stack up to that job description. And then reach out to folks that are in that role. Talk, ping them on LinkedIn, ask if they've got time for a 20-minute chat, just to get a sense of what the day-to-day is. And that will give you a better opportunity to understand whether or not you're right sized for the position, or whether we have to be more creative in looking at different roles that are more entry level, perhaps internship opportunities to continue to build up the skill set to get to the role that you want to be in eventually.
I think that's an interesting point, Ursela, because like a common frustration you'll hear from job seekers is, I apply to jobs, but I never hear back. And I'm a perfect fit for this job. I did look at each line item and I'm a perfect fit. So you're recommending, if you're not hearing back, to leverage your network, or even go on LinkedIn and find out who the potential hiring manager would be, and then maybe send them a polite LinkedIn message just saying, hey, I applied and was hoping to learn more.
I don't think that's ever a bad step. Honestly, if the message is polite and definitely, is reaching the right person, hopefully, it's not a bad thing to ask. If anything, it shows that there's a lot of initiative and great research skills if you're able to find that person that you're looking for on LinkedIn. But there can be frustration, and it's completely understandable. But I think that persistence and that ability to be creative will help overcome some of that frustration.
And I think one of the things, when you're talking about do your research, right? So that would be step one of maybe submitting your application and resume for a job. But another key part of doing your research is preparing for the interview. So once you do land the interview, what type of research should someone actually do? Like research could mean a lot. So what advice would you have there?
Some of it depends on who and what they're interviewing for, but know who you're interviewing with. Everything's on LinkedIn for the most part in our marketplace. So go on and research the individual. But I think also, research how the company is doing, what the company is doing. I can't tell you, we're a tech company. I can't tell you how many people will get on with us and say, so you guys are in healthcare? Like, really easy to read the first line of the website.
I gotta go.
So know what you're doing and be prepared. Don't act like you just sat on and spewed out a bunch of applications. The more people show that they're engaged and that they understand who we are, and they've done the research, they've looked at us socially, they've talked to people within the organization. That shows the motivation that you want to be here. And we want people who want to be here. We want people who want to help us get to that next level of where we're headed, not people who are just looking for a paycheck.
Just be purposeful in your approach.
Show up dressed. I had some guy come on with a Nike t-shirt the other day. I'm like, did you just yeah.
Still look
I think just be purposeful in what you're doing. And again, think about career and not job. Maybe some of that means soul searching and understanding what you truly want to do and be, and what are the steps to get there. And it might not be a 1-year plan. It might be a much longer plan than that in order to get to your ultimate goal. But be purposeful in the research you do. And to Chris's point, understand who you're interviewing with. And sometimes that dictates the questions that you ask too, right? Of the people. If you're interviewing with someone who is deemed to be maybe your peer, those questions might be more about the culture or what it's like to work for Jane Doe. But when you're meeting with Jane Doe, the questions might be more about like strategy or ops or revenue or something that's just a little bit different than just like the basic question. So just be purposeful and be strategic and think about what you want the outcome to be, and like how you accomplish it. It usually goes a long way. But polite messages help, It might be a numbers game in some cases, so be patient there as well. And then if you do get the time and attention of a person, be purposeful there as well too, because they're going to take time out of their day to chat with you. You want it to be meaningful for you as well as for them.
Yeah. And this goes back to what I said at the beginning of this webinar is the research is already out there, right? I mean, VentureFizz, you come to our site, you're going to find a podcast interview of Paul Lieberman. You're going to find an interview, a CXO briefing interview from Veeva with one of their executives. And you're going to find an inside engineering video with one of the engineers from GitLab on our site. So that information's out there. You just got to spend time watching it and prepare questions and be very, very thoughtful in terms of your interview. So, all right, we've come up to our hour. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. And more importantly, our panelists, Ursela, Kristin, and Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through all the great information, the advice, all the details about each company, because there's obviously a lot of great benefits for joining a publicly traded company. So I hope everyone learned a lot today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. All right. Signing off. Thanks again. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. At VentureFizz, our mission is to share the stories of companies, their people, and culture. So if you're interested in more interviews with founders and executives in the tech industry, make sure you click on the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching.